Hey guys, welcome. So glad you're here today. Today we are going to be on our first lesson, and that is going to be chess pieces. All right. Tinkercad has a great beginner lesson to show you how to put together a chess piece. You can find that under the lessons section. I just use this in my class. It's a great way to show building complex shapes with basic shapes, and it gives you a little artistic freedom towards the end. And so the main goal for today is to use simple shapes to make more complex shapes, and we're going to introduce the cut tool. And we're going to define that a little more and what that means in 3D modeling. But for right now, it's just going to be, we're going to use it sparingly, but it's a really great tool to kind of get more options in the future. So what you need to have right now is hopefully you've watched the introductory video. If not, I'll link it here. And you need to have a blank Tinkercad space open. This is how I lay out projects. I'll lay them out. I'll do them beforehand. This just gives you an idea of kind of the steps we're going to take to make these pieces. And so let's look at some of the options that we can see here. Here we have pawns, very simple shapes, and we have some bishops over here that are a little more complex, but we're going to see how we build on top of the pawns to make our bishops. And you're going to get some opportunities to make your own designs here at the end, so hopefully you'll get some creative freedom there. So let's go ahead and start. What we want to do is we want to have a clean workspace. Like I said, it's not a really good habit to have these sitting out. For you, this is just my kind of teaching purposes, and we're going to talk through piece by piece so we can kind of understand how they go. So the pawn, the simple pawn. And what's great about this is it's not made of too many shapes. As you can see, it's only 6 shapes here put together. And we're going to start this by bringing out a half sphere. Okay, we're bringing out a half sphere. Now, here's the thing. I really want to teach you how to do this stuff. I'm going to give you sizing and measurements, but I want to say that it doesn't need to be exact. You need to learn to kind of eyeball things yourself. Sometimes when we get into more complex shapes, I'll give you the shapes, but I can't tell you exactly how it's going to line up. And so you need to have the understanding of kind of that mental 3D picture of things in your head, like we talked about last video, of how things come together. So my example piece here is 18 by 18. And so what we're going to do is, remember, if we hold shift, we can bring down the half sphere in scale. Okay, so we'll make that and put it over here to the side. And then I have another half sphere over here that is 20 by 20. So I'll bring that out. We don't have to do anything to it. And we just need to drop it down to a height of 1. So let's drop it down to 1. Okay, and here we're going to use something that I don't believe I talked about last video. We're going to use the Align tool. Now, the Align tool is a great tool that allows us to bring everything perfectly together, either on the X or Y axis. And the way that you access that is by using the hotkey L. So I'll select my 2 items, I'll hit L, and I get this field of dots. All right, and what this shows is where do you want it to align? Okay, another way that you can do that is up here at the top. If you kind of forget, the Align tool is right here. So that's always an option. But we're going to use L because it's just easier to remember for me. Now, these dots are how do you want to align. If I click up here on the top, it gives me a preview. It pushes everything to the corner. And if I click down here, it makes everything in this corner. But we want to put it directly in the middle. So we're going to need 2 clicks. And the way we're going to do that is by clicking on this one to align them this way. And then click it here to align in the middle. But before we do that, you'll see here that all these dots are dark, right? But these dots are gray. And the reason they're gray is because we've already aligned as much as we can align to that effect. So there's no real reason to, there's nothing for the computer to do. So when I click this, you'll see that this dot gets grayed out. And now we have our basic shape, okay? Coloring in Tinkercad, if you're 3D printing, the color doesn't matter. It's whatever PLA or ABS you have. But here you have a bunch of options. I'm actually gonna hold off coloring until the end because I kind of want to show you a couple things there. But we have our base. So I'm going to give you a couple seconds to get that. Just as a reminder, this is 20 and it's 1 high. And this half circle here is 18 and we kept it. It should be 18 high as well. Double check that. No, it's not because it's half circle, so radius. All right, give you a second there to get that all together. And as we go along, I'll be deleting my pieces just so I don't get confused. Let's see. Next thing we want to do is we need to add the body of the pawn. And how we're going to do that is we're going to bring out a cone. And you can see here that our cone should be scaled together. So it's 16 by 16 and 13 high. So let's make it 16. Okay, and then bring it down to 13. And now we matched up that very nice and clean. And then I'm going to bring it over, and again, I'm going to use my Align tool to make sure everything's nice and clean together. Now you'll notice a difference here, okay? What you'll see is that when I aligned it, it really it doesn't look like anything, right? They don't match up. And so what we need to do is we need to use the raise option, which is right here above. And just for reference, we're going to check to see where this is. It is, so our cone is 3 high, so we're going to raise it 3. And now we have a nice matching pair, okay? All right, next thing we need to have a base for our item to come in, so we're going to bring another cone out. And last time we talked about how rotating, you have a couple options there, so just a refresher. We need to use the rotate option, which is up here at the top. Remember, if I go very high away from the blue circle, I get very precise movements, but on this one, I've kept everything chunky. So we're just going to stay and keep it a nice 180. And then we need to scale it down. So our sizing is 11 by 11. And it is 6 tall. So 11 by 11 and 6 tall. So one thing you need to see here is if I just go ahead and align these items, like we learned to do previously, you'll notice I lose it in there, and it's impossible to select. So before you do any type of aligning, you need to make sure that your height is somewhat correct. Now, we don't have the exact, I mean, I have the exact height here. It is 10, but we don't know that yet. So we're going to just guess and say 12 because that looks good. We'll line it up. Okay. And the good thing about chess pieces is that they're really your own, right? As long as you have 8 pawns that match, that's the pawns. And as long as the pawns are shorter than the rook, it's a correct set. So this would be fine, but just to keep everything kind of congruent together, we're going to drop it 2 to make it 10 high. And now we've got a matching bit here. All right, and then finally, we're going to come in and bring in the top. All right, and we've made a nice shelf to put this on. If you remember, we can hit W and create the item up here. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to bring out the sphere. And now I'm going to bring this up. It is 11 by 11. So we're going to hold shift and scale it down. And then we're going to make it a height of 4. Okay. So I'm going to bring these two bits together. I'm just going to drag it over, actually. Okay, and I'm going to get my work plane back. So, as you can see here, I have a little bit of a floating artifact here. What we want to do is intentionally merge the two. But like I said, bringing things up is usually the easier way to do it. So we're going to click this here, and then now all we have to do is drop this down using the raise tool to somewhere we feel looks good, okay? And now we have something that's starting to resemble our pawn, and just the last thing we need is the circle. Okay, so we're going to get our circle, and then that circle is just 9, so drag it out and bring it down. Okay, use W again, bring this up. And this is really the importance of a clean workspace. As you can see, I'm having a little trouble with this piece kind of getting in my way. And normally I wouldn't have this. You would have your work area and then your finish area over here. And so you can see that makes it a lot easier. So having a clean workspace, if you're one of those people that just likes to drag out shapes before, I'd kind of just recommend that you work with it as it goes along. All right, so here is the design option portion. You don't have to copy my pawn exactly. All you need to do is to have a pawn, and at this point I have 2 different styles of pawns. Both are perfectly acceptable. And this is really where the design portion comes in. So I'm actually going to keep the difference here. And now let's talk about color. So as you can see, I have an amalgamation of colors here. They don't really make any sense because the 2 colors in chess are black and white. So I need to fix this. So how do I do it? Well, first let's group everything together. Okay, and then all I need to do is go up to the color section and click on white. And then boom, my pawn is ready to go. But let's say for some reason that you wanted to do a multicolored pawn, if you had a design piece, all you would need to go is to click this multicolor button, come down and group it. And now if I have multicolor, you'll see I have a rainbow effect up here. And Tinkercad remembers what each individual piece was colored. And so it'll hold on to that. And that's really good for when you're like working on larger designs and you have some stylistic points in there and you want to be able to distinguish. But for right now, we're just going to keep this nice and clean and make this white. Okay, so there's our pawn. And pawns are great. And like I said, Tinkercad has a great tutorial on it for however you want to go. But really, when we look at chess sets, a common theme is kind of what we're looking for, some unity between all of them. And so making the bishop from our pawn is really a good idea because it allows us to use things over again. If you'll notice, there's some similarities here. The base on both these are the same. All I did was extend the cone to make this. I kept the top the same, and then we just made the classic bishop top. And so we're going to do that together real quick. I have all the pieces over here, but this is just really so you can see the pieces it's made of. We're going to cheat, and not cheat, but work smarter, not harder. And we're just going to manipulate this pawn into becoming a bishop. Okay? So this pawn has been promoted up the board, and it has chosen to become a bishop. So let's bring this over now. Okay? And all we need to do is raise this up. Okay. We've used the work plane previously, but on a cone, as you can see, getting this bit directly on top it's just never really going to happen. I mean, you could play with it, but there's no point. So we're going to use that same trick that we used previously, is we're going to raise this up to what we think is kind of the correct area. Eyeball, it looks close enough. And so we'll L, bring it in, bring it in. And honestly, that looks great, right? And so now what I have is I have a pawn that is tall, but I need to add the hat. So here comes the cutting portion, okay? So typically, a bishop's hat is it's going to be pointy. And we're going to bring this down and bring it up. And it really doesn't matter. You can bring it up to whatever you want to. I'm going to do 15 tall, and I'm going to realign everything. Okay. And that looks good. Now all I need is one of these dots. And so you have two options here. Because I have a dot right here, I'm tempted just to duplicate it and then bring it up. Bring it down and shrink it. And that works great. You could also just bring out a sphere and shrink that down as well. Remember, hold shift to make things scale together. But since I already have my dot up here, I think I'll just stick with it. And then I realign. I'm actually going to drop it down a little bit. Align using L. And there we go. So the last thing we need, and this is the new portion we're bringing in for the day, is the cut. All right. And so what I want to show you what cuts is, cuts are a great way for you to make changes to basic shapes, right? So we talk about using basic shapes to build more complex one, and we completed that by using the pawn, right? All this is 7 items put together to make a beautiful little piece. But with the bishop, what we need is we need a little difference. We need to have this cut here. So how do we do it? I'll give you a demonstration down here. You may have noticed that there is the word hole right here. And so what this allows us to do is it allows us to affect pieces and make cuts into them. So I'm going to click hole here. I'm going to align these two pieces using L, right? And now I have, oh, not quite there, L. Okay. I want to make it so that I have a hole through this square. So all I have to do is anytime you want to make a cut, you just need to join a hole to a solid item. So now I have a hole selected, I have a solid item, I go up here to grouping, I hit group. Depending on your computer is how quickly it does and also how many cuts you have, you now see that I have a hole in my square. And that's great. One thing you do need to know is you can always undo it and then it's just sitting there. If you do have a computer that might not be the fastest in the world, it might be better to try to limit how large your holes are, just because sometimes, you know, that the computer's keeping up with that. So if you have these really long, extensive holes that don't really matter, just keeping it tight and keeping the file light, you can even see mine a little slower. right there. But that's just a great example of a cut. And so what we're going to do here is we're now going to affect our bishop. So I'm going to group everything together. Okay. Make sure that's the color I want. And I'm going to bring it out. And now I need to make this cut. So I bring out a box, and up here I have 2 pre-done holes. I'm going to use those. And I'm going to bring this down to 1 meter. 1 millimeter. All right. And now I need to make this diagonal cut in here. And so the way we're going to do that is by using the rotate tool. And you could play with it like you want, but this one I used the chunky settings because that's easier. I went 67.5, negative 67.5. I'm just going to align these two just to make it easy on myself. Click on my cut, bring it up. And now you have to play with it a little bit. So a shortcut that is always helpful with this is the arrow keys on your keyboard. And so you have your 4 arrow keys on your keypad. You can tap those to make minute adjustments to your items. So I'm hitting the left on mine, that brings it over. I need to go a little this way. And that helps tremendously if you've got just a thing you need to bump over. And now that's where I want to make my cut. So as we talked about previously, all I need to do is select the solid piece in the hole and join them together. And now I have a bishop. Now, is my bishop exactly the same as this one? No, it's not, but that's okay because these are chess pieces and yours may look different than mine, and that's absolutely fine. But if I was building a chess set that I wanted to print, all I would do is I wouldn't build 2. That doesn't make any sense, right? I would just duplicate it, bring it over, and then do that twice more. Since I don't need this one, it can go. And now these 2 right here. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the first lesson. Got a lot out of it, I hope. Looking forward to working through the rest of these lessons with you. The bonus work for today is to finish out your chess set. There are 6 unique pieces in a chess set, so you've only got 4 left to do in order to make a complete set. Go crazy. Would love to see your designs. Please like and subscribe. It does help. And looking forward to seeing you guys in the future. So talk to you soon. Thanks.